a very warm welcome back to Borders Rugby TV for the start of the 2024-25 season. This afternoon we're up here at the Gytes for the Peebles Sevens and the first round in the Kings of the Sevens. Last year it was Kelso who were victorious here after defeating Hawick in the final, and of course they went on to be crowned the Kings of the Sevens just earlier on this year. It's going to be 4 pools of 3 again this afternoon, with the winner of each pool going through to the semi-final. And to take us through the highlights of those pools, here's Stuart Cameron.
Pool A was arguably the toughest of the tournament, with Melrose and Edinburgh Accies both disposing of Watsonians easily enough, but the head-to-head was one of the best of the tournament, with Accies racing to a 17-5 lead, helped by the player of the tournament, 17-year-old Rory Brogan, who lit up the Gytes with 4 tries against Watsonians and 2 against Melrose. But back came Melrose with 4 tries of their own, and when it looked like it would end in a draw, up popped Hamish Weir to clinch a thriller 31-24. Pool B brought Kelso, Biggar and Gala together for the second Peebles Sevens tournament in a row, and it ended the same way as last year, with Kelso posting 2 comfortable wins, with Dwayne Patterson and Archie Barber outstanding for the tournament holders. Pool C was a pretty tight affair, with guests Orkney coming through to beat Peebles and also Berwick to progress to the semi-final, making their 300-mile trip very worthwhile indeed. Pool D was an all-borders affair. Hawick, Selkirk and JED-FOREST battled it out, with JED coming through with a good win over Hawick and close win over Selkirk, which gave us a semi-final lineup of Melrose against Kelso and Orkney versus JED-FOREST. In the first tie, we saw Connor Spence try following a Struan Hutchison break to put Melrose into an early lead, with Robbie Tweedy retaliating for Kelso to level the scores. It was good to see Luke Townsend back in Melrose colours, and he'll be playing a big part in the 15s campaign this season, and it was Luke who put his team in front at the break with this try. Tweedy struck again after the interval, going in for his second of the match, and it set up a grandstand finish with just 2 points separating the teams. But on came replacement Rory Brogan to notch up his 7th try of the tournament, this time in Melrose colours, to seal the match and propel Melrose into the final. In the other semi-final, Orkney took on JED-FOREST. It was a great effort for a National 3 team to get to this stage of the competition, but for them it was a step too far. And despite scoring a couple of tries, they lost 40 points to 10 to a confident-looking JED team, and it set up an all-border final.
So after 2 thrilling semi-finals and an afternoon of rugby, it is Melrose who are going to take on JED-FOREST in the final. So let's hand over to our commentary team.
Melrose have made their way to the final after defeating Edinburgh Accies and Watsonians, and JED have made it through a pool with border rivals Selkirk and Hawick. So slightly different routes to the final, but it's the one task for both sides as they have to score more points than the opposition to lift the trophy here at the Gytes. And it started with a knock-on there from Melrose from the restart, so JED-FOREST will get the put in to the scrum. And there's going to be certainly loads of interesting talking points to bring you through the full 14 minutes of this game. We're going to start inside JED-FOREST's half, just to the infield side of the 15-metre line, rolled in and flung back to Rory Marshall, who was occupying the space in behind the scrum. He's been able just to slice through that beating heart of that scrum that was there and make good headway towards the halfway line. Douglas now, he gets the ball to Gregor Young. It ricochets back into the path of Robbie Douglas, but he gathers the ball at the second attempt, so Gregor Young has to protect him at the breakdown. Weatherhead then gives it to Nicol to Scott, and then Fotheringham bouncing back off of his space that he was occupying out a little bit wider. He presents the ball back to Finn Scott as he's brought to ground on the 10-metre line, and then another one of the youngsters, Weatherhead, gives the ball to Gregor Young again. Good possession-based play here from JED-FOREST, who win the penalty again, and Gregor Young takes it quickly over the halfway line, and Weatherhead quickly through the hands to Finn Scott, and then Nicol gets the ball in his hands, a little pump of the feet, and he's driven back in contact there from Doug Crawford, and then the muscle comes on from Melrose and they're able just to blitz JED-FOREST off the ball. Scott Clark gets it in the space quickly because Donald Crawford is waiting there, and he wants to try and have a foot race with Gregor Young towards the corner, and he stole a march on the experienced Sevens expert in Young, and he gets in for the first score of this final, and it is Donald Crawford who strikes the first blow, and it is Melrose 5, JED-FOREST 0.
Yeah, Don Crawford, we've seen that so often from him over the years, stands a man up, hits the afterburners. I've said this before, I'm sure he's put on a metre or two of pace in the last 2 or 3 seasons, and he showed it to good effect there in first blood to Melrose after they'd soaked up JED, to use the word pressure, JED possession, because they didn't really do all that much with it, unfortunately.
Yeah, JED, it's a hallmark of their play, isn't it? They have the ball, and then they'll eventually just grind you down. Struan Hutchison to get play back underway here for Melrose on the halfway line. He kicks it high into the sky, which a slight chill in the air now in Peebles as it's overcast after a day of glorious sunshine here in the south of Scotland. As Rory Marshall taps it right-footed from the free kick, gives it to Finn Scott, and then Gregor Young is waiting there. He's got Weatherhead for support. He's able to just get it ghost inside of Scott. Clark goes again. He's beaten 3 defenders, and Clark is able to rise off the ground and get back and bring the youngster to a halt as it gets through the hands. As it's now found Nicol is found fothering up. He flings the ball back, and Marshall is waiting there again. Just almost telepathic play from the JED-FOREST, knowing that if they're running into trouble, just to fling the ball back, and Douglas then gives it to Scott, who approaching the 10-metre line inside Melrose half as Weatherhead again goes for a little jinky run towards the Melrose defence, but just not able to unlock it this time. Gregor Young now grits the gum shield and passes to Fotheringham. Again, one-handed scoop out the back. He found Nicol, and then Nicol's got Rory Marshall there on the 5-metre line. A stamp of the ground with the right foot and bounces back in field. He's been clobbered by 2 Melrose defenders, but the gap is almost there. Gregor Young has been shackled by Struan Hutchison. Offloads back to Ben Fotheringham. It's been knocked on, and Doug Crawford now has the ball in his hand. It's been ripped from his grasp, but he's been able to keep hold of it. Matty Klein now is he able to breach this defence. Struan Hutchison has almost got in behind, but Weatherhead, he's got back brilliantly to make that, and he's taken a sore one as well on his knee. That was an awkward position there, and I'll hope the youngster is able to shrug off this injury. He's got to his feet pretty quickly as Melrose have made their way to the halfway line. Klein gets the ball away. Struan Hutchison tries to chip it forward, but Rory Marshall is waiting there. He's given it into the path of Ross Nicol, who certainly looks like he's running in hummus at the moment because he's not really making much headway, but he's made it up towards the 22. He's staying tall as well, but he's flung it back in field. Rory Marshall tried to gather, but Struan Hutchison gathers the loose ball. He flings it back in field, and Finn Scott is waiting there, and now it is Douglas. He's managed to find Nicol again, who's still pretty much in the same place where he lost the ball originally. He's been brought down to ground inside the Melrose 22 now. Douglas to Gregor Young, Fotheringham. Very lateral now from JED-FOREST. The stamps goes back in field, and the covering defence is almost there. The offload again to Gregor Young, but it's just fumbled off of his forearm and went forward, and it's going to be a put into the scrum. Great possession. It got scrappy at times, but JED-FOREST knocking at the door.
Yeah, they are knocking at the door, Dale. Breathless stuff, scrappy stuff, scramble defence by Melrose. Plenty of possession from JED, but they've come up just short. But they're going to keep Melrose hemmed deep inside their own territory here. I have to say, what kind of middle-class utopia do you live in? I've heard of running through treacle, and I've heard of running through custard, but I'm yet to hear a run through hummus.
I just try to keep you on your toes, Robin. I certainly don't look like a man that has carrot sticks and hummus, but Scott Clark gets the ball away from the scrum. Struan Hutchison is waiting there, and he throws the dummy towards Donald Crawford, who gets it back off the ground to Scott Clark, and then Doug Crawford. Rolly Brett, who's on the field of play now, and Hamish Weir have got some space on this side. Will Ferry is there in support, but Hamish Weir is making great inroads in towards JED territory. The offload to Will Ferry. Weatherhead is there. He's been almost palmed off at the first attempt, but he grabs on for dear life to the big bulky figure of Will Ferry. It's certainly a different weight battle, but great effort from that youngster. I was impressed with him at semi-junior, but he's shone in this tournament so far, the youngster from JED. Howe now gets the ball to Fotheringham. He's again trying to weave his way and unlock this defence. Douglas, who's had a good tournament as well for JED-FOREST, gets it back from Howe in difficult circumstances. Gregor Young looks to try and power through, keeps the ball in his hands, and then the Melrose defence just slips away, and now Ben Fotheringham is looking to try and get in behind the Melrose defence. Donald Crawford is well back there to try and haul the big man to ground. Well, it looks like there's going to be a yellow card here as well. I wonder if it's going to be Donald Crawford again.
It's going to be for A. Crawford.
Will Ferry, I think, is
it's Will Ferry, yeah.
Been shown the yellow card. Not releasing on the ground. Desperate defence from Melrose, and now Ben Fotheringham, I think, is just going to go directly over the try line. He tries to get the ball down, but the referee has signalled it's been held up, so It'll be half time actually. That first half in the Peebles final is gone in a flash. It's 5 points to 0 to Melrose, and it has been breathless stuff. JED-FOREST trying with all their might to get a try at the end, and if anything, probably should have.
Oh, Dale, you've taken the words right out of my mouth. Jed have got to score there. They've got to be more composed than that.
It's going to be JED-FOREST to get the second half underway under the guise of Stephen Turnbull, who's a glance at his left wrist, a shrill of the whistle, and in the right-footed kick downfield. Hamish Weir hoisted highest and gathers the ball. Rolly Brett then gives it to Luke Townsend, who sizes up his options, gives it back to Weir, and what a partnership that is, a Weir and a Townsend linking up in Melrose colours. Rolly Brett now back to Luke Townsend. Luke Townsend to Doug Crawford this time, and he's broke free, and he's a guy who's going to be hard to catch once he's in behind. The wheels are turning and he's going towards that try line, and Melrose perhaps, if anything, have really just stuck the knife in there, because JED-FOREST should have scored before half time and Melrose do it straight after.
Again, you've just said exactly what I was going to say. Take half time out of that. That's 30 seconds of rugby there, literally 30 seconds of rugby. Jed have butchered the chance, they've kicked off, Melrose have taken it 2-3 phases later, up the park, Doug Crawford's in, and you know that's what Melrose do to you. They've got great, you know, you hear a term banded around now, rugby IQ, but that's what they've got, and they've got it in spades, and they've used it to good effect there.
The introduction of Hamish Weir in this second half, or the end of the first half, has been a brilliant introduction anyway, because he's certainly...
And Melrose did that with 6 players as well, let's not forget.
Yes, 6 players for Melrose as the sun shines yet again. The shadows becoming somewhat longer here as the day draws on, and JED-FOREST are able to gather the ball on the Melrose 10 metre line. They'll be hoping to keep possession, but it looks like Melrose have been able to grasp the ball. They collapse to the ground and set up that phase of play. Struan Hutchison loiters in behind and then gives it to Luke Townsend, who goes back in field, and then he's going to give it to Doug Crawford again, and he is hearing it down the touchline, and it's going to be a quick fire double for Doug Crawford, who dives in at the corner. Again, Rory Marshall, second time trying to chase back the wiry little number 11 for Melrose, and it's another try, and it's a 17-point advantage now that few would argue it's probably one that JED-FOREST can't get back into.
Yeah, and they've conceded another try again against 6 men. Coughed up the chance, broken record time, coughed up the chance right before half time. Then second half, 2 tries, quick succession against 6 men. It's, like I say, it's what Melrose can do to you, absolutely, but Jed, to an extent, are architects of their own downfall here.
You'll be glad it's not closer, because the introduction of Rory Brogan is imminent, I think, and because there's such a distance between these two sides, I think your blood will be lukewarm at the moment, is it?
Oh yeah, and don't get me wrong, that's not Melrose's fault in the semi-final, and it's certainly not the players' fault categorically. It's the rules, the law is an ass in this instance, and it's something that needs to be looked at. But yeah, if he scores 3 tries in this final, in the second half of this final, and Melrose had won it, fair and square anyway.
Still a bit to play here. Struan Hutchison, we're going to get play underway with Melrose with a 17-point advantage, and he kicks it high. He gives something for his teammates to chase, but the JED-FOREST are able to flap that back pretty quickly. I know there's not much of a kick clash, but it's probably as close as you're going to get in this tournament. Is Elder, he travels with the ball in his hands. Rory Marshall gets it and then straightens up the line of attack, and he's looking to try and get round Struan Hutchison, but Will Ferry was back there waiting to support. And JED-FOREST players almost off their feet, but the referee lets that one go. Is bursting out of the line. Rolly Brett puts a bit of pressure on Ben Howe. Finn Scott retreats and then sizes up his options. He then has a second go. Gregor Young is there and does exactly the same. Elder linking up with Howe, and then flings a big ball into the path of Weatherhead, who's able to get on the outside of Klein. He's got some options. He's going to put boot to ball to try and go over Struan Hutchison, but it just gets caught up on the ground. And JED-FOREST are not able to retrieve the ball back in Melrose territory, as Rolly Brett is there ready to give the ball to Scott Clark in Melrose colours. Luke Townsend gives it to Donald Crawford. He puts the brakes on and slows play down, but there's a huge chasm in defence, and Crawford is in behind, but Rory Marshall is tracking. Luke Townsend is in some space, and he gathers the bouncing ball on the JED-FOREST 10-metre line, looks to anchor back in field, but the defence is back well for JED-FOREST at the moment, so the try is coming, but they're being made to work incredibly hard. But Rolly Brett is able to get round the outside of Kyle Grieve and go in the corner, and just when JED-FOREST looked like they were going to streak in for the easiest of tries, Melrose have made them work incredibly hard for it, but eventually JED-FOREST do get in the corner.
Yeah, I think that's as good a try as I've seen this afternoon, Dale. That's end-to-end stuff. Several players involved. Don Crawford with the initial break realised he wasn't going to go the whole way, flung a beautiful pass out to Townsend. A couple of bits of interplay between a couple of Melrose players, and again, one of the unsung, if you like, heroes in the ranks for Melrose, Rolly Brett. Never gives anything less than 100, never lets you down, always makes the right decision. He was on hand with the support play there to run it in, and if there was ever any doubt that the tie was finished, then that is the final nail in Jed's coffin, unfortunately.
And that conversion probably is, because it's a touchline conversion from Stuart Hutchison, so a very one-sided final here between these two sides. Melrose holding the advantage, able to ring the changes as well and bring that young man Brogan on. He's been impressive. He's been involved in some controversy as well now that he's donning some Melrose colours in a squad of 12 after Harry Mikowski succumbed to a knee injury. But he has been impressive throughout.
Oh, he has. I have to say, Dale, Edinburgh Accies must be absolutely kicking themselves, because they had Melrose dead and buried.
Yeah, they've been impressive, haven't they? And
yeah.
It's just a shame that they came off second best because they conceded a try in the last minute to Melrose, which they then went on to thump. Edinburgh Accies went on to thump Watsonians, so it would have been enough to see them through, even if it had been a draw. So yeah, they must be kicking themselves as JED-FOREST make their way into Melrose territory now through Finn Scott up to the 22. He's weaving out of traffic, but not able to find that gap in that defence. Melrose working incredibly hard off the ball as Elder is trying to find Palmer, but there's almost a gap there as Scott Clark loses his foot in, and Elder is weaving his way. He offloads to Gregor Young, and he's able to get the ball down, and he's certainly not lacking urgency to get play back underway. The conversion attempt successful from Gregor Young, but 24 points to 7 now.
Yeah, consolation for Jed. Fourth try of the afternoon for Gregor Young. You know what you're going to get from him, and that is tries throughout a sevens tournament. Seldom will he leave the place with less than 3 or 4 of an afternoon, and that's what he's got this afternoon. But yeah, too little too late, you feel, Dale.
Finn Scott, he's going to get play underway. He's looking to go short here, and he's looking to try and find Palmer, and it's almost going to catch Melrose out cold here, because the man with no number on his back is able to find a pocket of space, and JED-FOREST retrieve their own ball. And how they could have done with that perhaps about 5 minutes ago, that sort of play, as Shearer Gibb angles his run, he splinters through the defence, and he's going to scorch through. Brogan is back for Melrose to try and defend, but Robbie Shearer Gibb, and the referee is going to say that is the final act of the final, and it is going to finish 24 points to 12 in Melrose favour, and they are the first victors in the Kings of the Sevens this season at Peebles. But you've got to say, on the balance of play, you know, it's been pretty tight between some of the teams at the top, the likes of Kelso and Brackies, but ultimately Melrose made it to the final, and they made it pretty difficult for Jed there.
They won this tournament. Not only, you know, they've been the best team on show, but they dogged it out against Edinburgh Accies when pretty much any other team, maybe bar Kelso, were absolutely dead and buried against the Accies. But as we've seen before, I think it was at JED Sevens even in the previous tournament, as it was, that they were the same. They were dead and buried against somebody. They dogged it out, and they went on to win the tournament. They've done exactly the same here today, and all credit to them, you have to say. 2
tries from Doug Crawford, 1 from Donald Crawford, and then 1 from Rolly Brett is enough to see them squeeze in front of tries from Gregor Young and also Robbie Shearer Gibb here in the Peebles final. Melrose are victors after they've defeated JED-FOREST.
It's been a hard pre-season for the guys, so starting off mid-June, and then we did 3 weeks of essentially running, weights, circuits, things like that, and then we had a week off, and then just started again last week with a bit more rugby detail. So we definitely use this tournament as a bit of a pre-season blowout as well for the guys that are obviously playing their sevens. But yeah, just said in the end, in the circle, we couldn't have started it in a better way, obviously picking up 10 points. So yeah, we felt as if we picked up from where we left off in sort of April, May time last year. So just a real bonus, really, getting the full 10 points here today.
we kind of came in not really knowing what to expect, to be honest. It's a new coach, new team. We had 3 or 4 young boys sort of playing as well. We've sort of rotated subs, playing a slightly different brand as well. So we're pretty happy we get into the final. We're obviously disappointed. We had a few chances in the first half that were maybe borderline 14 pointers that kind of gave Melrose the sort of ascendancy, but credit to them, they were clinical, and hopefully we'll learn a bit from that. We were speaking before, it took us 4 tournaments last year to get 7 points in the Kings, so we'll take it.
Kings is definitely on our radar, and we obviously have the 2 tournaments in August, and then we have a big break until April-May time again. So we'll see how many points we can pick up at Gala. It's early days, obviously, yet with 9 tournaments that'll go, and then we'll rip into April-May. So it's a funny one because it's in focus, and then you kind of leave it for the 15s, and then you pick it up again. So definitely something we're targeting this year.
How are the club feeling about the coming season?
Really positive. Last year it was a bit of a perfect storm. Coaches leaving, boys being unable to commit quite as much. It was, injuries, almost everything went wrong at once, when if it had been 1 or 2 things we'd have struggled. So it was just a perfect storm. Training's been really good. It's been a reset. It's been really positive. Jono, Ryan, Purdy, they've come in with a lot of enthusiasm, which it's infectious, isn't it? So, numbers have been really good at training, so we'll hopefully kind of build. We've got a tour next week to York, so everything's quite positive, and kind of we'll hopefully take it from there.
We've got a pre-season hit out next Saturday against Musselburgh, then it'll be Gala Sevens, and then we've got Alnwick at home, and then we're in that first Premiership game against Heriots, who we know pretty well from a couple games in National 1 in previous seasons. The boys are absolutely buzzing for it. We're really looking forward to the challenge ahead. We know it's going to be a really tough challenge. We know it's going to be a step up in intensity and physicality and accuracy. We're quietly working away. We've got Scott White on board. We've got a few other coaches working in the background, and guys are really pushing themselves, and we've got some real competition for places at the minute. So the club's in a really good place, I would say, at the minute on the field, and also just picking up the win here today just helps that kind of culture, buy-in, and getting guys motivated to win things. So,
and what are your hopes for the season then?
We spoke about this in one of the first sessions, probably quite cliche. I'm sure every club will do it. They'll have a culture session or a goals for the season session. Obviously, with 3 teams getting relegated and us, as you mentioned earlier, getting parachuted into the Premiership, we want to maintain that status. So that will mean a finish of 9th and above. Obviously, we want to do as well as we can. So yes, we want to finish as high up in the table, but we obviously the main priority for the club, I would say, this year is that maintenance and not getting relegated and essentially shooting back down into National 1. We have had a leg up into the Premiership. We don't want to then just drop straight back down into National 1. I think I've done 3 or 4 seasons in National 1. It's a hard league to get out of. It is tough, so we want to maintain that status in the Premiership and then maybe look to build sort of in future seasons from there. So to answer your question, goals for this season as a collective is to maintain Premiership status. As an individual is just to try and pull the squad on, try and develop some of the youngsters that we've got, some exciting youngsters at the club, just put as many minutes under my belt and good performances as I can for my hometown club.
So after a great afternoon of rugby and the rain staying away, it was Melrose who showed JED-FOREST a clean pair of heels in the final and took home the Peebles Sevens title. In 2 weeks' time, we'll be at the Marooned Rugby Festival in Gala. Hope you can join us there. But for now, from all of us here at the Gytes, cheerio.